This is a big week at the Security Council, with China's signature event taking center stage. But first, let's talk about Ukraine. We've seen a dramatic shift in the Ukraine crisis, particularly with the US swiftly altering its policy. On Monday, the Security Council, at Russia's request, held a meeting on the Minsk Agreement and Ukraine. Assistant Secretary General Myroslav Ne Zha urged all stakeholders to step up efforts to end the war and call for greater international cooperation in achieving a just peace.
We reiterate the Secretary General's call on all countries to help prepare the ground for a just peace. And we stand ready to use our good offices and to make available all our tools and experience in support of such efforts.
But what really stood out was the US change in tone. Watch this.
As our Secretary of Defense stated last week at the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, we want a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
Now, what does the UN think about the US-Russia meeting in Saudi Arabia, which discussed the Ukraine crisis without Ukraine's participation?
What is the reaction from the Secretary General that a meeting about Ukraine, there's no Ukraine in that meeting?
What the Secretary General would like to see and what he's been pushing for is a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, in line with General Assembly resolutions, in line with international law, and in line with the territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Well, judging by the response, the UN doesn't seem particularly eager to be involved in these negotiations. At this stage, there are no concrete details, and it remains unclear what conditions all parties would accept. But what we know for sure is that the next Monday, on the third anniversary of the Ukraine crisis, both Security Council and the General Assembly will hold meetings on this issue. The General Assembly is expected to adopt another resolution on Ukraine during its 11th emergent session. But now, let's turn to the main event, China's signature event on the implementation of multilateralism. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi presided over the Security Council meeting. And the topic drew immense attention. Over 100 member states requested to speak. And here's what UN Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres had to say.
And because we believe in the singular value and purpose of the United Nations, we must always strive to improve the institution and the way we work. We have the hardware for international cooperation, but the software needs an update. An update in representation to reflect the realities of today. An update in support for developing countries to redress historical injustices. An update to ensure countries adhere to the purposes, principles, and norms that ground multilateralism in justice and fairness. And an update to our peace operations.
I also spoke with Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar about why multilateralism still matters.
For me, one would say that maybe it's not really a very good time to talk about multilateralism, globally. What do you think of the importance nowadays?
So the governance has the multilateral institutions, particularly the UN and the financial institutions, the governance system of these institutions have been weakening for quite some time. And the two examples I gave you, Palestine and Kashmir, are very, very, obvious to. So I compliment, choosing of, a theme and subject for dialogue at the Security Council level.
Following the meeting, Wang Yi addressed dysfunction of the Security Council to the press.
我们看到，近年来面对一些重大的危机和冲突，安理会确实需要更加及时地采取有效的行动。目前的这种状况不能够再继续下去了，应当以联合国成立80周年为契机，重温初心，与时俱进，更好地回应各国人民的期待。
And now let's switch to something more lighthearted. On Monday, CMG China Media Group also hosted a special event at the UN introducing the Chinese animated sensation Ne Zha 2. I teamed up with the UN News team for a fun rap session with our guests.
田雷滚滚佛好哈哈，
披着火混声要喳喳，
直播抢钱，
我笑哈哈，
年轻 gaming 为主喇叭，
滴答滴答滴滴答。
We had a full house for the event, and after the event, attendees shared their thoughts on the film.
Actually quite enjoyed it a lot, so I would like to say thank you to China Media Television for this opportunity. I think that it has a very deep meaning, and it is very great to watch this movie as a family. I enjoyed graphics, I enjoyed sense of humor, I enjoyed the plot.
You first think that some people are bad and some are good, but it turns out total opposite in the end. So I think it takes a lot of hard work. Like it could take the whole the life of the whole earth to make that movie because it's really good.
Well, next week we'll be closely watching the meetings on Ukraine. But for now, that's all from me.